and welcome to Coproduce Care. Today we have with us Raina Summerson from Agincare. And as a provider of social care services, Raina is going to be talking to us about the trials and tribulations of being a provider, everything that they have to do, the joys of it, and some of the crazy stuff that's going on at the moment around the budget and Corona, and lots more. So this is going to be a great chat. Thank you for coming down.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
So Raina, first of all, can you just explain who you are and what you do in Agincare?
Okay, so I'm Group Chief Executive of Agincare. So we've got several different holding companies, so we cover quite a diverse range of services compared to maybe a lot of providers our size. So we have home care across the country, we have extra care schemes, care homes, care and nursing homes, including for younger adults mental health, and we do supported living and living care, and we've got an employment company and we've got a training company. So we've also got a head office and obviously the support functions that go with kind of delivering all of those care services. So yeah, quite a diverse range of services, and so I sit as Group Chief Executive across all of those. And yeah, we're family owned business, started in 1986 with one care home, still family owned, no exit strategy, quite sustainable, but yeah, a big range of services across the country. So about, probably about 55 sites now, about 4,000 staff. So yeah, I think in terms of anything that's being chucked at social care, we're probably part of it.
I didn't know you did so many things. That's a lot. Do you think that you've grown organically because you've just seen there's a need to have your own HR in-house, is that something you provide as a service?
We've always had our own HR in-house. We've always tried to do all of our services in-house. As we've grown, you kind of always go through the, should I outsource something, what should I use? So sales and marketing was probably the only thing we really used externally, and IT contractors, though we have our own IT support as well. And HR, we try and keep HR and recruitment, quite a core team. If we want HR employment advice, we'll use it. We'll use our legal advisors. And there might be odd bits of pieces of work that we get people in, but normally we have tried to grow our own team, and we've got some great success stories about people. And I've been with Agincare 16 years this year, but we've got lots of other team members who've been with us on a long journey, and their careers have developed, and so that's our preference. In the last couple of years, we've also looked at bringing in new skills, because you want the mix, you want the experience from other places as well. And I mean, we've grown organically. The diverse range of services, I think, for us has always been about. I think partly because a lot of us come from health and social care, so we kind of are aware of the diversity. And I think in terms of an organisation, it's quite good risk-wise. When austerity kicked in last time, we found home care hit terribly, really, overnight, really, the reaction of local authorities and central government and the effect on the economy really hit hard. And, we had to reevaluate where we were going, and then we hadn't been doing care homes as much then, but we thought actually there is a need. We feel there is still a need with workforce pressures, with higher dependency, with people living not only longer but more remotely from their families, with workforce issues in home care. So we turned a little bit more attention to that, consolidated our home care, made sure it was safe, made sure it was sustainable, made sure we looked at the viability of contracts with local authorities, and made sure that was right and solid. And then the growth went into a different area of the company, and I think equally we can kind of pull and push that growth and that investment of time and resources to ensure that we're sustainable and long term, that we're not going to kind of crash and burn, really.
Yeah, I think it's interesting having an organisation like yours that's got so many different bits to it, because sometimes people think, if you have an organisation, you're just doing home care or you're just doing residential, and they compartmentalise it. But when you think about when you're dealing with one person, I know we've found a situation where we might have someone in a residential care home and then they don't need it, and then they'll go to supported living, but they don't want a whole different company with a whole different set of staff and rules. So if they can transition from one to the other without having to change the whole staff team. I think that really works for them.
Yeah,
Have
I mean,
you had situations like that.
Yeah, I mean, we always say when we always kind of try and do the pathway of care, you know, ideally it would be great if people come to us at maybe a lower level service and then stay with us through to end of life, or when they don't need a service anymore. In reality, you know, that doesn't always happen because geography and although we've got the range of services, they're not necessarily always in one area.
Okay.
So we've got pockets like in Medway, we've got, you know, all of our services are layered really well there and in quite a tight geographical area. But in other areas you might have a care home but you haven't got a particularly close home care office, and in other areas it's differently. But I think the diversity of social care is what, you know, sometimes we struggle with the kind of knowledge and awareness of what social care does, because it does so much. It's so dispersed, there's so many providers in it, so many different types, and you know, we talk about home care like it's kind of homogenous lump, and you know, even in our home care organisation, we deliver, you know, prison services, respite services, night services, day services, extra care services, end of life discharge to assess services. You know, so you've got this whole range of people and ages and illnesses or conditions or disabilities, and the outcomes that are different for all of those services. So we kind of make this sweeping social care that covers so much, which is what I love about it. And I think a lot of people, you know, I think once you're in it and you love social care, because it is just so multifaceted.
First time I came across you is you were at Health Plus Care conference, and you were there on the stage with on a panel, and you were talking with, I can't even remember who was there because obviously they weren't as interesting as you.
It was two GPs, wasn't it?
Okay, don't call me out. So I loved your honesty, and I loved your representation of providers on that stage, because people sometimes don't hear from provider perspective, and it was just like, don't forget us. Yeah, we're provider service, but we do so much, and we have so many issues that aren't being talked about. Like, do you feel that, you know, you've been doing it for so many years and in it and living it, is it ever frustrating that over that period of time we're still in the same place talking about the same issues?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I mean, I started in care as a direct care team member, and worked in hospitals, worked in care homes, in people's own homes, with a multitude of different people and places. And then I was a social worker, so that brought me into contact with different perspectives, and then a regulatory inspector, as you said, for 5 years. And then being in Agincare, and kind of obviously it is the same issue. I do get frustrated. I'll sit and think, I was talking about that in my social work course, or I was sitting talking about that with the advent of community care, and how are we still sitting here talking about the same issues? And, you know, the budget's classic yesterday. How do we have another budget where social care is ignored? How do we have people's, you know, a Secretary of State saying, oh, well, I've written about cross-party talks and long-term planning, because this isn't an overnight crisis. This is something that's been going and going and going. And I think, you know, we've got so many people, all levels in social care, who are propping up a system that is broken, and that's in terms of operating an organisation in it. It's about working and frontline team members' experience and reputation and conditions, and the lack of respect and acknowledgement they get across society in general, you know, right through to people who are now going without care that they need because the system isn't there or the funding's not there. So to keep pushing it down the line is terribly frustrating. And then you get other issues like technology, you know, and that's the kind of be all and end all now. It's yes, technology has developed loads, but I can remember equally sitting there 25 years ago looking at smart homes, looking at how we would, you know, enhance care and people's lives through use of technology. And don't get me wrong, there's some great, you know, great things out there in technology, and we as social care need to embrace that and have more support again from central government for funding and ideas and innovation. But we know that largely in social care, I mean, most of ours, about 75% of our operations are with local authority or CCG. They are the most dependent people. They're not having that access through funded care unless they really need it. And a lot of what they do, and our teams can't be replaced with technology and equipment, and it's about human contact, it's about human care, it's about compassion, it's about support. So it's got a place, but let's not, and it's not a new thing. It's been there for a while, and the fact that it hasn't really found its feet and absolutely revolutionised social care really tells us that it's an enhancement. It's a really good in preventive care. It's really good in health monitoring. There's some great ways, and don't get me wrong, we're using it. We're using electronic records. We're using different things, looking at acoustic monitoring. So it's not that I'm against it in any way. We need to embrace it more. But it's not a replacement for what our teams do. It's not a replacement for humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I think like the language that is used in social care is a little bit, I don't know, it's almost like social care is a problem.
Yeah.
There's also a crisis. Like we need to bring social care up to the levels of the NHS. It doesn't have, it's a poor relation to the. But when you think of like, there's the same amount of staff that are employed by the NHS and social care. I think there's even more in social care. Yeah. And I know the jobs are different, but it's the way that it's talked about in the media, I think, and also politicians, and it's just changing that dialogue of actually there's so many strengths and there's people who would do an amazing job, and actually NHS could learn from social care. Yeah, absolutely. I think is a really good point.
And I think every day, we always look. I think, as you say, media drive it a lot, but we're always looking at what does social care get wrong? And that's including, we're not funding it properly. We haven't got a system that's robust enough. We've got sort of, the bad news stories hit the press. But actually, I think every day and every week, if I stop and think about what we do and what our teams do, I think, how do we get so much right every day? How do we, just in our home care organisation, we probably deliver nigh on 45,000 separate visits every week. Then we care for another 1,000 people who live in our care homes. Then we care for another few hundred clients who live in care. Actually, how do we get that so right without a lot of support from society or central government? How do we get that right so much is what we're really saying. Right. And as you say, looking at that and saying, isn't this an amazing workforce? Isn't this an amazing sector that does so much across the infrastructure of society every day? And yet, as you say, doesn't get the recognition. Our workforce don't get that recognition. And I mean, I've said before, you go in a pub and you say you're a nurse, and no matter what's wrong with the NHS or what's wrong with your local hospital, people will, be, oh wow, you're amazing, and that's right, because they are. But actually, our social care teams are. And if you go in a pub and say you're a care worker, people are more likely to go, and what do you do that for? And be negative about it and not give it the respect it's due. So
I wonder whether the social care wasn't mentioned much because they don't have confidence in it. They don't know it. They don't understand how it works. They're not speaking to the right people. They're not asking us how we do what we do. And so it's this big elephant in the room, but they actually don't know how to deal with it because they're not used to dealing from the ground up. They want somebody to do a report and tell them this is how you solve social care, and then they may or may not listen to it, instead of just going out to the sector and saying, what are you doing right, what do we need to help you with, and then finding a solution if there needs to be a solution. I mean, how that solution, how they need to help us really.
I think it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, the government's always a transient thing, and everyone is quite a short-term issue. And I think social care is a big issue that no one's quite dared in their term tackle. And we saw Theresa May try and do something, and then that went disastrously wrong. And so I think it is a prickly area, like your cactus.
There you go.
But I do think they have heard. There have been mechanisms. I mean, the UKHCA as a trade association for many years, really after austerity kicked in 2008-9, put together kind of large provider groups and forums, as did Care England and other national forums and bodies, and have made very strong representation over the year. And we have had over the years, and we have had avenues where we have been able to sit at the table with ministers and with people from the Department of Health and Social Care and talk about the issues and say, ask us, we'll tell you, we want to share. And we've tried to have representative groups whereby we're reflecting all the different services, we're reflecting different geographies, And we're trying to look at solutions and positive things rather than just moan all the time, because that's the other thing that the sector can be a little bit, where we can be a bit negative and we can come across as whinging and all going on about the same thing. We've got to be saying, actually, if we did this, we could do this. And so I think they've been told, so I do think it's a case of not listening. Care homes are a little bit further ahead, I think, than community-based care services in terms of direct kind of domiciliary care, living care, supported living. I think anything that's kind of bed-placed reminds them a little bit more of hospitals and stuff, and they get their head around it. Obviously it's bricks and mortar, the investment's different. I think it's been a lot of pressure. So I think the care home market's a little bit more mature.
So it's got a stronger voice.
Yeah, I think it's got a stronger voice, and I think the thought of 50 care homes not being built or being closed is more tangible for a lot of ministers and a lot of people who don't understand social care to get their heads around. Home care, living care, supported living, other support services, less so. And partly because we're all propping the system up. It has, yes, there have been failures, yes, there are closures, but has it actually impacted hugely on society? It's impacted on individuals, it's impacted on individual areas tremendously with their lives, but it's not had that big market hit.
I'm always really cynical about things like that. I think, are they just hitting certain sectors because that's their voter base?
Quite possibly.
And, they think, well, LD services, they might make the assumption that LD certain people may not be a big voters for them, so I'm going to support the people who shout the loudest and mean the most to me. I might be wrong, but sometimes I wonder if that fact puts in.
And I think there's something about, we're a very, very dispersed sector. There's a lot of people in it, and at the end of the day now there are a lot of, most of it is independent sector. So in a way it's that kind of government, well, we can't interfere too much because everyone's an independent business and an organisation, and we can't prop up, we can't be seen to be supporting them. But actually that whole mindset to me needs to change. If you've chosen politically, you can think it's wrong that so much care is now in the independent sector, but it is. And then, so we are part of the core infrastructure in the same way that the NHS is. It might be more dispersed and broken up, but actually doing anything in the NHS, I sit on the Dorset Workforce Action Board as a representative of the sector leadership group, and there's 5 trusts in that room, and they've all got their own agenda, and it's hard to get them to work together. So in a way, the NHS is, yes, it's a cohesive brand, but it's also got a lot of fragmentation in it and differences. And so is our sector, but I think there's a fear because there's a lot of independent businesses in there, and so there's that fear factor of helping out. It's the difficulty of trying to channel something into the whole sector.
So you mean getting the communication out to
I think
small
communication, I think communication, but also how do you get people to cohesively engage? How do you put something out that's going to benefit everybody when it's actually their business and they're independent, they're not a state, even though you could do it by even looking at, well, actually a business has got a certain amount of its operations, it is providing state funded care, therefore surely you're an arm of the state. You're not doing, you might be an independent organisation, but you're delivering that care on behalf of the state, of society, and we're held accountable for that through auditing and contracting and payment and everything. Therefore we should get the same respect back in terms of being a key provision.
That's a really good point, because I had this conversation on the last chat and another chat before. I think you're talking about the difference between the way private providers, independent providers, and non-for-profit providers are treated. So I was speaking to Martin Green from Care England, and he said, well, the person who's receiving the care doesn't bother. They don't mind. If you ask them, is this person private or is it charity, they don't mind. And then there's other people who are really passionate, saying it should all be in the voluntary sector because it's caring, and so nobody should be making a profit from it. So that's 2 different arguments. And then, I'm interested to hear about what you've been experiencing. And how do you feel like you've been treated differently as a private organisation compared to charitable organisations? I
think there's a lot of generalisation, and I really dislike that. So I think it's my personal values and my social work values. For me, I hate injustice, and injustice to me can be about, you know, societal injustice and looking at groups of individuals. It can be about injustice, but equally it's about actually when I see our teams and other providers working so hard and giving so much and propping the system up, subsidising, you know, the government's delivery of essential care, because people will go always the extra mile to try and deliver care. It doesn't mean we get it right all the time, but nor does the NHS, nor do most public funded services, nor do charities. So I think it's this kind of profit's bad, not-for-profit's good, public sector's good, private's bad. It's just ridiculous generalisations, you know, that you will get the odd, you know, person who shouldn't probably be in care in the NHS, in primary care, in acute care, in community-based care, and no one wants that time. But the vast majority of people, and the people that deliver the services and coordinate the services and manage the service, you know, it's a hard job.
Yeah.
And you don't do it lightly at any level in a social care organisation. And so it's really hurtful. And also the lobbying that I talked about, you know, through the UKHCA members, Care England, National Care Forum, now, like, you know, NACAS and the great work Carolina's doing to try and represent the sector. You know, people in the NHS get paid to do their jobs. They don't turn up for nothing. So it's kind of ridiculous to expect that people in the sector shouldn't. And I think that actually we put in a huge amount. If we were to, you know, the lobbying and the representation that's been done by myself, my colleagues in Agincare, but equally colleagues across the independent sector over the last 10 years, would have cost the NHS tens of thousands of pounds if they used consultants. We've been offering commercial expertise, experience, knowledge, you know, data from around the country, and we do that all in our own time, and with our organisations and whoever the shareholders are paying for that. And so to kind of wipe us all off as money grabbing bad guys, it's ridiculous. And charities will, you know, often charitable bosses will be on far more than independent sector bosses, and, you know, their funds may not be appropriately managed, or they might put a lot of their funds into fundraising rather than direct care. If there wasn't the investment from, you know, the independent sector, and even, you know, I've got personal views about some of the private equity investment in it turning into an investment pot.
Yeah.
And I feel quite strongly about that and what it maybe has done to the sector. But equally, if we hadn't had some of that investment in society, who would have paid for these care homes to be built?
Yeah.
How many other services would have closed because there wasn't the public money to invest in them? And equally, there's a lot of intelligence, skill, enthusiasm, goodwill, entrepreneurship, commercial knowledge that is really valuable and vibrant for the sector. And so to have it dismissed, I get really upset, because it's like putting us and all of our team members into this, you know, money-grabbing, useless, uncaring people. It's just not true.
Recruitment is a big thing in health and social care. And you seem to have a really nice way within Agincare of bringing staff up and promoting staff and careers. Can you talk a bit about what you do in that space?
Yeah, we try, and obviously we have recruitment issues like every social care organisation, but I think we have got some really good success stories about people coming through. And I know when we do the work, whether it's with the Department of Health and Social Care, whether it's with the health service, we really try and talk about what the careers are in care, because I think people, again, think, you know, we talked about thinking about all the services lumped together, and I think people equally think all the jobs are lumped together. Everyone goes out and delivers frontline care, and, you know, and they think of that in quite a basic way. And so I think we've done a lot of work with colleges through our own recruitment, through our own kind of comms, to try and say, actually, it doesn't matter whether you're a frontline care team member and you choose to do that frontline care forever, or you want to progress, we've got a place for you either way, and they're equally valuable. And the experience and empathy and skill, and in negotiation, in time management, in risk assessment, in, you know, just kindness and compassion that you have to show every day in frontline, you know, work, because particularly with our home care, they're often working on their own. They turn up, don't know what they're going to find when they open the door, And they deal with it, and yes, we've got a part of playing, in terms of, do they know what they're doing? Have they got policies, procedures, guidance, support, networks, training to help them? But a lot of that comes from the values-based stuff, which obviously is much stronger in social care and recruitment now, with kind of value-based recruitment toolkits and things. But I think for us, it's also about saying to people, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Because some people want to progress in that career and do different things, and other people just want to be good at what they do and enjoy what they do. And we've got some great examples. I mean, in home care, we've got lots of examples of people who've started at frontline care, developed into a senior home carer, come into the office to do coordination, progressed into deputy management, progressed to registered manager, which is a really big legal responsibility, big job, and then gone on to do either business development management roles or gone into operations management. And Kelly in our home care team, Karen in our home care team, the examples of people who've been with us for many years and done that. And that's fantastic, because then they're sharing their experience with other people, they're role modelling, so other people see they can do it. And they it's just brilliant for us to see that happen, and they bring so much to the organisation. And equally, we get that in accounts, we get it in administrative roles, we get that in HR. Amy, our HR manager, has been with us for years and developed, and she's done training in HR. And she's like a font of knowledge for so many people. Jo, our group quality manager, people can develop, and I think it helps with us because we're a growing organisation, and obviously it can be a little bit different if you're a static organisation. But even so, I think our celebration of our care roles and the different careers, it could be commercial, it could be HR, it could be accounts, it could be finance management, it could be quality, it could be facilities, it could be end of life care, dementia care, mental health, learning disability. And then, again, we put it all in a lump. And I sat with NHS colleagues at Workforce Action Board somewhere a couple of weeks ago, and people really don't get it. They're like, oh, well, maybe they could come into the NHS and have a career. No, they can stay in social care and have a brilliant career. And obviously for myself, I've started in frontline care and developed, and it's been a great career for me.
It's lovely hearing those stories. I think it goes back to that thing of people thinking, well, if you're in the NHS and you've made it, if you're in social care, then you don't really want to be there. You're only there because you can't get a job in NHS.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I actually think it's really interesting to hear those stories, and also to open up the debate about there are so many different careers. And like you say, sometimes you want to stay in social care. I was reading something that one of the reports CQC put out, and they were talking about it'd be really good if more providers work together to see if social care could be like a lead-in to the NHS. So we could develop careers so far and then hand over to the NHS, which maybe that's sometimes what people want to do. We've had lots of students who want to get work experience, work for us sometimes for a couple of years, and then they want to go on to be a nurse, but they want the experience in social care. So sometimes that works really well. But equally, sometimes, we've had people who have started with us even as doing kind of like domestic type work, and then ended up being MVQ assessor. And you don't hear enough of those stories.
No. Or the people come the other way, because we're seeing increasing, NHS is hard, working on wards is tough, and actually the pay that we've got in our nursing homes, particularly and for nurses, is more than comparable. It's better.
So you've got nurses in care.
And so we do get, as you say, we've had different people who've done student nursing or occupational therapy, and that's great. If people want to go off in that route, that's brilliant, because hopefully they're going off with an embedded knowledge of social care that will help change knowledge about it in the health service. So, we support that. But I hate us being seen as a feeder. We're just a feeder for the NHS because there's not really a future, as you say, in social care. Your future is in somewhere else. But we're a good training ground. We can do all the hard work, and then someone else can reap the benefits. Actually, there's always going to be a part of that. But I think we need to be seeing it as more fluid, people maybe coming in and out, maybe more job sharing roles, I think particularly in clinical care. And we see that with our nurses. We're being approached by people who said, actually, I've had enough of the NHS, I've had enough of working in that environment, and actually I do want to be somewhere where I can deliver maybe more person-centred care. I can be part of a team that's a bit more consistent. I can, you know,
and you probably have more autonomy as well.
I think so. I mean, sometimes that's a challenge, because I think in a hospital you've always got probably someone else there to ask something, or a consultant who's taking ultimate responsibility, and actually in a care home environment it's again a hugely responsible role. But again, we have, you know, non-nurses leading care home shifts and managing care homes, and they do it brilliantly. So I think the autonomy can be great. It can be off-putting for some people. There's a lot of responsibility. But yeah, I really would love to see that become more fluid. And and again, that's one of the things you say, you know, do we get bored of the same things coming up? My first proper job was a joint funded role with Surrey County Council and I think it was at the time North West Surrey Health Authority. It was joint funded about getting people out of hospital into their own homes, and we're still struggling with that concept of joint working. We're still struggling with that concept of getting people home safely, and then with the most appropriate care and support to take them forward, or reducing that completely. So, you know, we do seem a bit stuck in
a rut.
Yeah, stuck in a rut. Stuck in the middle.
Stuck in the middle. There we go. So we've just had the budget, and
it was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, March. And I was here, I was in the office, and I was in between trying to do things. So I was trying to listen to it whilst I was trying to do work, and I kind of got into it a little bit late, and I thought, okay, I'm listening up social care, or maybe I've missed it. And then it got to the end, and Rishi said, well, we want to do everything we can do. We deliver on everything, and now we're going to deliver on the NHS and social care. And that was the word. Yeah. That was it. And then he sat down. And all the Labour MPs on the other side were kind of like heckling. That's the only mention. You know, what about social care? What are you going to do? So yeah, what about social care?
Well, I did exactly what you did. I kept thinking I'd missed something, and then I did a summary email of the budget out to the directors, and I was like checking Twitter and checking the live news to think I must have missed something, and I think Twitter was amazingly quiet after it in terms of social care.
It was shock.
I think it was. I think people were genuinely shocked, because I think we'd had the national living wage uplift announcement, and everyone, you know, we all know we want our team members to be paid more. You know, we want them to be paid better. We want to have a framework that can give them better terms and conditions. But actually, to lump a 6.2% uplift on national living wage without then telling the sector that's already under pressure how you're going to support that is just irresponsible. And I think we'd been fobbed off a bit with the kind of, it'll be in the budget. And then to have nothing mentioned apart from the long-term plans and the cross-party talks, it is just, you know, woefully inadequate, and I think genuinely did shock a lot of people. You know, we've got the coronavirus lump sum, and that will affect local authorities, so some of that may filter through, and there's obviously some emergency monies that can be drawn on for smaller businesses to help with any SSP, or if they're not eligible, there's other hardship funds. And then there's money, obviously another big pot of money for the NHS that we may see through various discharge schemes and joint working. But though, you know, when the money comes through the NHS to social care, it often doesn't come through in anything other than dribs and drabs, and it comes through usually with the sole purpose of propping up the NHS rather than social care in its own right. So I think it is really, really worrying. I think people are genuinely shocked, genuinely worried. Now it's like, wait for the spending review, and then that year will be bated breath, and then probably like other spending reviews, it will be inadequate. So yeah, genuinely worrying, genuinely shocking, and I think genuinely when everybody is extremely tired and under pressure after many, many years, and then coronavirus on top of already waiting to see if we're going to get any uplifts from local government because they're waiting on funding options from central government. So a lot of us, you know, we've got increased wage bills that are our biggest costs across all care business. How are we going to meet that? What's that going to mean for some service delivery? How are we going to continue to recruit against, you know, retail? We've got immigration, points-based system, you know, it's like everything conspiring against us to carry on delivering. So I think genuinely people were it's not that we expect much because we used to not get much, but I think genuinely there was shock, and I think it's a very dangerous position, particularly with such a big unknown with coronavirus and trying to tackle national issue. So very short-sighted.
I wonder whether when we talk about the lack of mention of social care in this budget, and what you were saying about the national minimum wage increase, and the fact that I know some local authorities that we work with are just a little silent on how much they can support us in terms of raising rates. The people who suffer the most are the people who work in social care, and the people who work in social care, thinking about International Women's Day, are the majority of them are women. And I know when I do interviews with people, a lot of them are women who it's from every sector, from every part of life, but sometimes you'll have women who maybe they've been carers themselves, maybe they've cared for their family, and they are now thinking, I'm confident I can do this job, and then they come and they do the job and they do it fantastically well, and a lot of them are so selfless as well, and then they get the qualifications, and like you were talking about the career development, and I see it, and I see how it develops people. And it's just such a shame that we can't say, we see what you're doing, we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It kind of breaks my heart that we can't just put two and two together and say, you're doing a great job, and we actually think you deserve to be paid really well for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we get a lot of, I think in the last probably 3 to 5 years, we've had a bit more noise around that. So NHS leaders are often out there now talking about social care. They realise that it's integral to the success of their roles and their organisation, and I think that's great. I think you get lip service from ministers about how wonderful social care workforce is, but it's not followed through with anything, and then the danger is that our workforce doesn't understand the pressures we're under, then it goes back to that, it's because the independent sector doesn't want to spend the money on staff. It's because I hate it when you see CQC reports and there's issues with staffing, either about numbers or about consistency or agency use, and the default position is because you won't spend the money or you won't employ enough staff. The recent comment, the social care sector needs to redouble its efforts to recruit more people.
Like we haven't been trying already.
Exactly. I mean, we spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on recruitment, and I'd love for actually the money that we're having to spend on recruitment to be put into our workforce and give them more, but it's balancing everything all of the time. So we try and explain to our workers, we know that you're underpaid and undervalued, and we do everything we can to make sure that's not how we feel about you. But these are the boundaries that we work in, and we try and affect change, we try and commit to lobbying, we try and commit to representation, we talk about how wonderful you are, we try and showcase your work. And I think that works to a degree, but it doesn't pay the bills, does it?
Absolutely. But we can only do so much, and I think the stuff that you're doing around lobbying and putting the word out and being that honest provider who's on the stage and talking about those issues, I mean, it's just brilliant. We just have to have more of us, and they need to listen. And I think it's very much the case of, you hear people say these great things, and they'll go, someone will go on Andrew Marr, and they'll be like, Matt Hancock, or somebody will say, we really value social care, and then you have the budget. So you look at what people say, and then you look at what people do, and it just doesn't tally.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how long we're going to be letting them off this. I think we have to go marching somewhere.
Exactly. Well, we were saying we need to get a little bit more Extinction Rebellion
absolutely.
on it, maybe. But I mean, we tried that with the social care I remember when the junior doctors were striking, and the UKHA put together a really good campaign, Save Our Home Care, and our workforce really got behind it. And I mean, they were taking pictures of them on trains with the placards and things. And we were all on social media. Obviously, there's not a great representation, although there's a core group on social media. There's not a huge representation on social media. We used Facebook, we used social media, Twitter, LinkedIn and things, and we just couldn't even get enough to get it to Parliament. Couldn't get, 10,000? And yet the junior doctors, there's only 50,000 of them, their petition was full within a few days, it went into and we just have so many people using the sector either as employment or in terms of needing care and support, and yet we just can't garner the voice in any mass. And I think that isn't through lack of trying from quite a few people in the sector, but we just don't seem to be able to succeed to get it.
I feel like that's the action plan now.
It is,
We're going to
we
just
need to decide.
we should start a petition today. Say, what should we call it? Save our social care, value our social care.
Yeah,
And then just
something.
We'll think of something, and then get as many signatures and say, you know, we're not going to let you off. Next budget, it better come, and it better come strong. Let's do it. But some really good points. Because we are in coronavirus, COVID-19 times, I feel like right now, just in case people are watching in like 2 months' time, I feel like we should talk about it, because I've just come off a conference call talking about what we're doing and where's the guidance and what should we be doing, and how providers maybe we need to share information about our disaster recovery plans. And I know that there's a Cobra meeting this afternoon as we're speaking now, and something's going to come out from that. How do you feel the response has been from local government, helping providers be advised on what they need to do, and what's Agincare doing?
Okay, I think like we've been reviewing things, talking to different people, and I said to you on my way up, I was on the phone to ITV journalists who were asking providers and saying, what are we doing, how do we feel central government responses, how do we feel local government responses, and the theme there was very much about actually people are obviously starting to panic more and more, and actually how do we reassure the people that we give care and support to, how do we reassure our teams. So I think that's an ongoing piece of work for us, and I think there's several elements. We're reviewing things more than daily, throughout the day, every day, issuing guidance, making sure we keep up to date with everything, linking in, updating obviously business continuity plans, linking in with our, again, trade associations and people that can help represent our views into central government and local government organisations. So LGA are very clear, ADAS are very clear, Department of Health and Social Care are very clear on what the sector needs, and I do believe, between the trade associations, those messages are getting there. What kind of messages
are they saying?
So I think it's that don't overwhelm the sector in terms of, local governments all asking providers for things every day, because that becomes overwhelming. For us, we've got 55 sites across the country with multiple contracts and multiple local authorities, multiple CCGs. Everyone asking us for updates every day just becomes a full-time job and takes away from the essential matters at hand, which is supporting our workforce to deliver essential care, our own business continuity planning for essential items, and for the what-ifs, reviewing the risks for our group of staff and for the people we deliver care to. I think they're saying, why aren't we on par with the NHS in terms of equipment, in terms of access to financial help, to practical help? What's going to happen about things like regulation, staffing ratios, complaints, safeguardings, practical things that if through the virus care has to be delivered in a different way and risk assessed, or even in some cases can't be delivered, how are people going to work together? So I think there's a whole array of things, some very practical, like access to what if our suppliers run out of soap or gloves or aprons, or we need face masks to deliver care to people who have become infected. And so we're looking internally, we talked about technology earlier, we're looking at how can we do welfare check calls, how can we maybe use technology a little bit more to do Skype calls, how can we offer reassurance, keeping things on our website updated, reassuring our teams, reassuring people we deliver care and support to. And in a way, as I was saying to the journalist earlier, we're very good in the sector at coping with, we've always got BCPs in place. We've always got strong infection control measures in place. And I think we're kind of just kicking all those in, but it's when does that become almost impossible because all the schools are shutting and, supplies are running out and things that are out of our own control. So I think the government isn't, again, really making us feel confident about support specifically for social care. I think our NHS colleagues will help support that. But
with the call that I was just on before coming on to here, I was mentioning about what if in our area, so we had a member of staff or somebody in a home who had it, and then we had to take our measures, and then that home had closed, or we had lots of staff down, and then that we had a knock-on effect in a lot of different homes. What is the local authority strategy? Because we have to share our business continuity plans, but what's their plan? I just, as a provider, would like that reassurance to know that there's something being worked through, and that will be given to us, and not just we're being asked to hand over information to them. So I'm hoping that that comes through, because the whole staffing issue, and if anything goes down with staff, really kind of worries me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. It is about, I suppose, the feeling of reassurance that along with the NHS and along with local councils, private, independent providers will be in that mix, and we will be in it together and sharing resources. Because some of the ideas that are coming out of central government, quite frankly, around student volunteers and bringing retired healthcare workers out, it's just a bit laughable. And actually, it is very different. I mean, in the care homes, we do have similar situations where there's like bad weather and people get trapped, or there's a bad norovirus historically outbreak or something. And I think as staff, we've had care homes in a way, not easier, but you'll literally have staff who'll get a family to bring them a bag in, and they'll camp out for a couple of days, and bring their PJs in, and and if people are infected in that home, in a way, kind of a bit of a lockdown, you could probably have people in there, depending on how ill they are, whether they can work and things. But given some of the symptoms we're hearing now coming out, a lot of people are achy and a bit fluey, but they're not. I suppose they're able to kind of do things. I think home care will be very, very different, because obviously what you don't want to do is spread it all around a community. So it's going to be quite hard to think of solutions. I mean, we're used to planning for bad weather. We're planning for floods recently in Herefordshire. Our team did an amazing job still delivering care amidst all that flooding, and obviously being affected themselves at home, possibly with flooding or issues, and then having people we give care and support to having issues, and then just the general infrastructure. So, our sector, on a positive note, our sector is really good at coping with adversity and getting on with it. But we just need to know that while we're doing that, we haven't got regulators, councils, central government coming down on us and creating more issues than they're solving, and that any resources that are there are shared equitably, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. And I suppose it's just thinking through some of the ideas of, if you are having, because the staff will do that, they'll say, well, I will just stay in a service for a while, but then because it lasts for the incubation period is so long, and then some of our staff have got families, young families.
Absolutely.
Who's going to do the school run? Who's going to do it? Because it's a long period of time. Can you keep somebody in a care home for 14 days whilst what happens to their families? I feel like it's just a little bit out of my comfort zone in terms of dealing with these type of incidents. But we'll see. It might all be over in 2 weeks' time, and
You never know.
you never know. Okay, so let's move on to some of the social media questions that we had.
Okay.
So we had David Smallcombe from Care and Sport West asked a few questions. And the first one was, where does Agincare stand on price challenge to local authority commissioners? So I think he's talking about when you are being commissioned to deliver a service, and you feel that you just don't have enough money to deliver that service, and challenging the local authorities who commission you to maybe negotiate the price.
Yeah. I mean, that's happened many times over many years, and we talked earlier about austerity, 2008-9. That was a key. At that time, we had to go through every contract we held and considering its viability and sustainability. And we do that every year, or if a situation changes in the year, we'll do that. It's kind of almost impossible to generalise, because every delivery is different rates, different circumstances, different volume, potentially different geographical issues with recruitment and pay and delivery costs. But I think generally our approach is try and have an open, honest partnership with your local authority or CCG, be honest about the issues and the risks, present information, and I think it's amazing how many people aren't clear about why something isn't viable. And if it's not, and you can't make the figures stack up and people aren't listening, then to have the guts to give notice. And we've given notice on several contracts and pulled out of the area. And equally, we have had many tender bids that we would have liked to try and deliver, but operationally we felt that we couldn't deliver a sustainable quality service at the rates that were being tendered. So I think in a way it might seem for some easy for me to say that because we're a larger organisation, maybe we can withstand some of that pressure, but equally we can have a lot of pressure points at any given time. If you're a sole provider in one authority and that is all your livelihood, it can be a lot harder for people to say no and to stop. But long term, the result is, as we've seen, providers either going bust or just selling up and not being able to deliver that anymore. So I think, again, it's been very difficult to get the market to give a concerted, cohesive, this is not acceptable because we won't bid for something but someone else will. Or so, so it's difficult. But in terms of directly with the local authorities, challenge them, use, make representations. Again, I keep banging on about it, but local provider associations, national provider associations, right to local government association, right to your MPs, right to central government, lobby, explain, give information, don't just whinge again. I think be constructive, talk about solutions. So some of the things we've done is gone back and said, actually, look, this isn't about us making more money. You give us this and we will pass it directly to our staff. Yes. And that will help retention and attraction to try and help capacity. So I think thinking about solutions, but it's just it's kind of, you have to keep on it really.
And also it's a lot for providers, I think, for smaller providers, when you're thinking we've got to deal with the issues of running a service and now we've got to lobby with the local authority and they may not even, sometimes they just say we don't have the money for it, so then where do you go? I suppose then you have to give it up.
We've just done it. We've had a service somewhere in, I won't name it, that we've had for 6 years, and we've been delivering high quality care. It's always had a good rated inspection, always been very positively received, and we're delivering 2,500 hours of care a week, and we asked for uplifts, didn't get it. Right. We're not making any money, so it was just holding its own really. And so it's not about greed and profits, it's just about sustainability. And the tender came out and the price wasn't uplifted in line with what the costs are rising. So we didn't bid for it, and we're just about to hand all that work over to someone else. I don't know how they're all providing that care at that price, but they are. But I don't know that long term it's sustainable in terms of quality provision or in terms of a commercial model for the organisations. But we are losing, I don't want to ever lose that amount of volume of care delivery and lose the people that have worked with us for a long time as well. So
I think one of the things that I've noticed is you'll have some organisations going into the care industry and care isn't actually their main thing that they do. So I've seen it where there's been a tender and some providers have said this price really is, we're going to struggle with it. We're not going to be able to pay the minimum wage with this commissioned rate. And then another organisation who's larger, who has maybe some reserves to just invest in something, takes it over. And what you learn in business school is that you can have a loss-making strategy where you'll take a package, it'll be loss-making, but then you'll be too big to fail. So then you can negotiate with the local authority to say you need to bring up the prices, so that you that's your strategy. And I find that quite disingenuous, but you literally see it in front of your eyes, and you see the local authority say, well, they're cheaper, so we're going to go with them. And then what happens is sometimes that large organisation says, actually, we're not going to do it anymore. Our business strategy has changed, and they hand back the packages to the providers who said, I told you so. And I suppose the person who then doesn't benefit from that or suffers from that potentially is the person who's getting support.
And it wastes a lot of public money in the process, through the tendering process, through the negotiation. And I think the other thing is you have got larger organisations that carry debt. They don't run the business, isn't structured in the same way that a family-owned business or a sole trader business is, and it's very hard to compare and contrast some of those models of care delivery. But ultimately, often, if they're going to sell that on, and as you say, want to gain volume and then pass it all on to someone else. But I think local authorities, some of them don't feel they've got much choice because their own funding position's poor. But there are others who possibly do it as a strategy just to get care on the cheap. So.
Yeah. It's complex. So next question, do self-funders prop up the state-funded service users, so people receiving care, like they do in residential care?
So he's thinking of home care. I think it's very different in home care. I think in most of the care, I mean, obviously you have got quite a lot of luxury operators, care home operators now who aim directly for the private pay market. And I think, but you have got a lot of care homes that do have a mixed, client group. You've got people coming in from local authority, you've got people coming in from CCG, and you've got people who have the funds to pay themselves. So, and there is in some areas a danger that the private pay people end up subsidising. I think in home care you see a little bit more of segmentation. I think most of the people who focus on a private pay market focus on that market
solely.
Might do a very little bit, but like us, we do a little bit of private pay, but it's in areas usually where we're quite mature as an operator, where we've got consistently, we've got a stable staff team, we've got, stable office, we've been going for a long time, and we've got the reputation. And because actually trying to juggle delivering a local authority contract and all of the, commercial and contractual responsibilities that come with that, and the fact that those people are generally quite high dependency and shorter visits over the years, and you're trying to fit then private pay people into those rotas and use the same staff team can actually be really challenging. So I don't know about, I wouldn't say subsidising. Some organisations, certainly not in ours, and we wouldn't ever approach that as a business model.
Okay, so the last question is, what do you feel about non-regulated services where personal care is being delivered? So what do you feel about those services? Because lots of supported living providers walk very fine lines in this area. So I probably should explain that a little bit more. So you've got Care Quality Commission, CQC, they regulate services, but they don't really regulate services themselves, they regulate the activity that goes on. So like personal care is one of them, and there's a whole list of them. And then you've got the supported living services, which if they're delivering personal care can be registered as a location, if you like, with an address, or you've got domiciliary care services where the office will be registered. And then some providers, traditionally supported living wasn't registered, so it wasn't inspected by CQC, and there seems to be a bit of a binary or a split between some providers potentially doing personal care, maybe not understanding that they're doing it, but not being registered, so carrying out a regulated activity, and then others who are. So I think it's a massive, and people are just confused. And I think the market, if anyone was to do a survey, they probably find that providers aren't clear, and even maybe some CQC inspectors aren't clear on it.
And I think that's more the case now with extra care schemes as well. I think there's that similar vein of coming through, some confusion around inspections and approach. I think again it's an issue that's been going on a while for supported living. I mean, when supported living first kind of was introduced, and a lot of care homes even now are still kind of taking a care home but going to supported living model, but actually still operating like a care home. And I think there's a danger in that, because you are essentially running a registered care home, not a supported living service. I think that whole framework for learning disability, for supported living, for mental health is still in transition. It's still, as you say, confused. I think for me the principle of non-regulated service delivery and regulated service delivery is a really interesting one, in terms of we find it in live-in care, we find it in home care. I think it's great if innovators and disruptors are coming into the social care sector and saying, actually, we think care can be delivered differently. And I think it's great if people are empowered to be able to make decisions and go on a phone and find their own carer and employ them and bring them in. And I think what's scary about it is that people don't know what they're doing. And to me, social care, fundamental issue is choice and control. And you only have choice and control if you understand what your options are, and if you have an honest assessment and information about what the options are and what the risks of them are, so that you understand that if you choose to go to a regulated service provider at this end of the road, that may be more expensive, but that's because they're regulated, because they have to comply with legislation, because they have a responsibility to you. And so if the care team member goes off sick, that's their responsibility to put someone else in. They do all the pay, etc. And if you then have a provider at the other end of the road that's non-regulated and is offering what seems to be a very similar service, but actually they're not checked, and actually you really should be having a contract with them and paying them yourself, and actually if they don't turn up, you should be the one that's arranging a replacement cover, not the... If you understand those choices and you understand that you're taking maybe more risk, more responsibility in that other choice, I think that's fine. But I think what we've got is a society that doesn't understand. So again, you've got this you haven't got a level playing field, and you've got the regulators coming down very hard and local authorities on the people that are doing it, trying to do it properly, and and actually it's not that there's not a lot of people in the non-regulated trying to do it properly, but I think the boundaries and the crossover is dangerous, and I think it becomes risky for vulnerable people. And it becomes quite demoralising for the regulated providers, because someone's purporting to offer the same service but they're not. And then I think you've got the whole issue about in a supported living setting, it's not as... I mean, we've got our supported living setting that's a relatively new thing for us. We've delivered supporting care but under contract for just the care delivery, but we opened our first scheme last year for 6 younger adults, and that is, we have a separate registered domiciliary provision, and not all 6 people have personal care. So when the inspection took place, not all of the adults were spoken with, their records weren't checked for all of them. But I could see even in that how actually, because there is some shared hours as well, how that could become difficult. So I can, it's I haven't got a solution. No, but I think it's an area we need to talk more about. And I know, again, I keep going back to lobbying for the sector, representing the sector, talking about the issues in the sector. And I know it's again something Jane, Colin at UKHA have been very vocal about. It's not about saying we think non-regulated care is bad and they shouldn't be in the space. It's just about choice, options, and parity, really. Yeah,
absolutely. And understanding from both sides.
Yeah, I don't think absolutely.
Anybody understands. So there's any one person out there who say this is what it is, and then the whole sector can say, oh yes, that's how it works. So agreed. And I know that the CQC were doing a review of supported living, but I think that's probably on the back burner now with everything else going on, so who knows. Great, that was fantastic, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like I've learned loads. I always learn so much on these chats, every single time, but I know you do a lot of kind of on the conference scene and lobbying. If anyone is listening to you and thinking, either love what Agincare is doing and I want one of my family members to get involved, or just want to get involved with some of the stuff that you're doing, how could they do that?
Yeah, so I've got Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. I manage the Twitter account in terms of I've got the personal one, so people can always contact me through there. But we've equally got the Agincare Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Contact head office, email me. So we're always happy to talk to other people about getting involved and just sharing information for the good of the sector, really.
Great.
But it's been lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.